Your business is not a sports team. It's really more of an art troupe.
Welcome to It Doesn't Take a Genius.
Ramsey!
Hey there, Marshall.
What's happening?
You know, I just had this really clever idea from a client, and I told him, I warned him that I would be turning this into a podcast episode, and he said, with my blessing. So, Virgil, you're out there. I thank you for this crazy idea that has obviously been a part of his success. He's part of I won't mention the client, but he's been a part of a very, very successful organization that makes a lot of money. And guess what? It's not because they're a sports team. So I'm gonna unpack that if you don't mind, Mr. Marshall.
Oh, no, I think that's amazing. And I just want to go on the record and say that I have never met a bad person named Virgil.
Is that right?
Yeah, it seems like all the Virgils I've ever met are like, well, that's a good guy right there. Just, just a good old boy right there.
Well, Virgil would be, some of the best Latin poetry out there, some of the best Roman poetry out there. So the Aeneid, you know, a riff on the Greek epics, sort of taking it to the next stage and saying, what if those characters ended up founding Rome and tracing some of what happens in the Aeneid and some of what happens in the Odyssey and making it his own? Just genius level work. So you know what? From an artistic perspective, I think I'd agree with you.
Ooh, thanks.
Yeah.
Man,
So anyway,
let me put on my beret and we'll begin this conversation.
that's a terrible idea. All right. So let me explain this. I'm going to unpack this a little bit. What obviously, we're not a sports team and we're not an art troupe. It's not the same thing. But I just talking to Virgil, he was putting this seed in my mind about a mindset of, instead of thinking about sports and how a sports is result oriented, it's really more about art and how there's a process that we're oriented around. And businesses can be more like art. They can be more like a process in a number of ways. So I'll list a few here just as I've been thinking about it. Creative expression over winning, and I'm putting that in quotation marks because we'll have to define what even winning is, right? But art is self-expression and putting forth a unique perspective, and sports is about defeating the competition, right? And we are like that in the business world. We have competitors, but really you think long term, the businesses that succeed, what are they doing? They're innovating. They're creating a new thing. In a sense, that's art, right? A novel solution, a novel product, a new service. So it mirrors the artistic process a little bit. And you could think of people like Apple that way, right? Apple was coming up with things that, frankly, many would consider art, right? Things that are in the Museum of Modern Art, right? Some of their industrial design. So there's something about expression over innovation, and I don't think it's just limited to fancy schmancy companies like Apple. It's anybody who is going through the effort of saying, let me create something here. Let me create a product, a process, a customer experience that my clients are going to discover and have some delight in. That's art in a sense. So I think there's this thing about expressing that's a big deal in the business world.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think you're onto something. The idea of, how many times in business do you hear the expression, we need to think outside the box?
Yep.
Right, which is a call for creativity. We
Yep.
need to be more creative. We need to think of it in terms, that other people haven't thought of yet.
Right.
Which to me is the art, right?
Right.
The what do they say? The first guy to hang a urinal up in the Museum of Modern Art was an artist.
Yep.
The second guy to hang a urinal in the Museum of Modern Arts was a plumber.
That's right.
Yeah, so who's thinking of these ideas that haven't been thought of before and getting to them before everybody else does?
That's right. That's right. And if you think about kind of even that example of what you just gave, right? There was a oh shoot, I'm gonna really embarrass myself. Duchamp. I can't remember who it was, but there was a modern artist who started putting price tags on commodities. I think he did a urinal, and it did go in a studio somewhere or in a gallery somewhere, and he's even creating something there, right? It's something we've seen before, but he's creating something new by saying, do I get to call this art? Let's have a discussion about it.
Hmm.
Now that's art. Okay, that's an art discussion. He made money that way. All right, so I'm just going to say for the record that there's something to be said for the fact that you're creating things, and again, I want to stress that even the experience you're creating for a customer, right, the touch points that you put them through, right, is a little bit of art, right? It's a little bit of art. Or let me give another example from a business we're really familiar with. Somebody has to schedule service customers, right, in a car dealership. And certainly there's some science to it, but it's a little bit of an art. They get a feel for how far the shop is loaded and who can handle what jobs, and having about 30 different variables in their mind. So that person becomes a little bit of an artist, a little bit of a craftsperson as they do that. You have to create a little something there. It can't just be, I'm going to follow this process manual. You'll never get there if you don't inject a little bit of yourself and understanding of where people are in the situation. I would just call that, again, a little bit of an expression of yourself, and creating something new that might not be there. So
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Well, if it was science, if it was even more to your analogy of sports, the formulas would be clearer.
right.
So we've been in hundreds, if not thousands, of dealerships, and every single one of them requires a different approach, a different technique. They're gonna
Yep.
have different processes. They're gonna have different ways of going to market. They're all completely different based upon the town and the economy and their staffing and the resources available to them. So yeah, if you were able to just take, all right, here's the formula and drop it into every store, they would figure it out and do all of, everybody would be doing the same thing.
That's right.
But it doesn't work, right? The art of figuring out, okay, what's best for this particular place given its particular circumstances.
Yep. Yep. And that maybe leads a little bit into my next item of sort of how businesses can be more like art, which is that they're iterative, right? You're rarely just finished with art, right? There's always something more you can be doing with it. There's a revision of the painting that you're working on, or you're doing more studies to come up with something, or we're going to produce another season worth of things that are theater troupe or what have you. There are drafts, there are experiments, there's refinement. And doesn't that sound like some of the best businesses we've ever worked with, right? They do literally, we call it iterative development, right? They're testing and refining products. They're looking at feedback from employees, from customers, instead of just sort of like this one thing that we're going to launch, and that's going to be the end of the game. It's not a game like that. It's something that's ongoing and iterative. So I think it's businesses are like art in that they're iterative.
Oh yeah, yeah. I believe the Mona Lisa is not finished.
That's right.
I believe Da Vinci was struggling with the hands,
Yep.
and they're still not done, right? And he tweaked
Yep.
it and tuned it for a long time. And I think that's the addictive nature of business, especially business that change rapidly or are highly complex, like the
Right.
automotive retail space. The addictive nature is you'll never have a perfect day.
That's right.
Like every single day you drive home, you go, if we'd have asked for this sale, or if we'd have, shown this person this, or if we would have, tried this, approach differently, it was good, but it could have been better.
Yep.
And then you have to get up the next morning and hurry back and go, all right, right, how do I keep this thing creatively improving?
And I would point out that that is something that happens at the organizational level as well as every single individual in the organization. Some of the best advice I got when I was going through my coaching training was to hit the pause button after every coaching session and just basically ask myself the respect based coaching questions, right? What about that went really well? And what about that would I do differently next time? Right. And lock in something that is a slight improvement every time to my coaching approach. That and I don't do it all the time. Right. That's the funny thing is I don't do it all the time. And yet every time I do it iteratively, I get a little bit better. So when I want to be a really good business, I become more like art and do more drafts, do more stops to measure feedback and refine things. So
The oh yeah, no, I think you're spot on. The idea that yeah, every single day I've got to figure something new out,
yep,
and we tell our clients, right, you got to keep going because everybody's trying to take your lunch money,
yep,
right? Everybody else is sitting around trying to figure out how to get what you have.
yep,
Right, whether it's your market share, your customer base, whatever it is, attention. So yeah, the moment you stand still is the moment you've lost.
yeah, yeah. And that leads into the third reason. Another reason for not standing still, because what you just said about the competitors, sounds dangerously like maybe we're about to make a sports analogy, but hang tight because there's some intrinsic motivation that's causing me to do this as well. It's not just the competition, right? There's something about this. Artists create sometimes for the sake of just creating. Sometimes they have this passion, this vision of something they want to see come to life, and businesses are really similar to that, right? In some cases we have purpose-driven goals. We've talked about various brands that your daughter has appreciated, like Tom's Shoes, right? That they have a social welfare component, a societal problem they're trying to solve. But even like we've featured Purdy's Coffee Company, my favorite coffee company in the world, right up the road in Richmond, Kentucky. And if you'll recall, we did some episodes about what their drive-through looked like when they reopened during COVID. And it there was a message that said "You are loved" on a sign just where the customers could see it. And they've been like that from day one. They Part of the drive for them was that they were going to be really intentionally about serving guests, and serving them not just great coffee, but the experience, right? Like the ambiance, the way the employees treated them, the quality of the coffee, and also cultivating the community that they were a part of, right? That was, I mean, I've heard them talk about it, that's a driving force for them, right? So seeing that come to fruition was part of the magic for them, and so that was an intrinsic drive for them. The financial stuff came, right? The business came. The being better than the competition is something that naturally happened because they were living out pretty authentically some things they wanted to see accomplished, wanted to see come to fruition. So intrinsic motivation is how businesses like art as well.
Oh yeah. Well, and the great leaders, the great organizations think that way. I
Yep.
remember I went into one of the best stores in America, like just all these metrics, arguably, objectively, that one of the best stores in America. And I said, wow, how can I help you guys? You're already the best, and the owner looked at me and he goes, yeah, we're the cream of the crap.
Right.
He says everybody in our industry is awful. We're just the best. He says we're not measuring ourselves against them.
Yeah.
They're right. We're wanting to get better every single day. And
Right.
so that's why you're here. And so yeah, he wasn't, it wasn't we're winning, they're losing. It was we could care less what they're doing. as long as we get better every single day. We know all that other stuff will work out, right? We'll
Right.
be profitable, we'll win awards and all, the
Yeah.
accolades will come as long as we continue to get better.
Well, so that you're leading very nicely into all of my points here, Mike. This is great because the
And
next
for
one I
the
was
record, I have not seen your points.
I didn't show you my outline at all. I
Yeah,
apologize.
yeah, just they think I've got them on the wall here that I'm glancing at. Oh yeah, this is what Mark is going to talk about next. No, I have no idea.
We're pretty loose, which is my next point is that art stays loose. There's an embracing of ambiguity, right? Art is often about interpretation, and you're not certain how it's going to be received in the minds of the audience. Sometimes we're experimenting, sometimes we're trying things, right? We're being iterative, but translating that into all sorts of different ways. A business is deciding to enter a new market, right? Totally uncharted waters. Maybe they are taking a risk. It's an iterative risk, probably, if they're doing it right, but they're doing something that explores like, could this be another area where we surprise and delight our clients? Could this be another area where we have a revenue stream? And they're just trying things out and they don't know what's going to happen. And they're okay with that, right? Now, it doesn't mean that they're not monitoring it. Doesn't mean they're not being intentional about it. But again, that's what artists are doing, right? They're being intentional about pursuing some kind of tension that's already there. And so embracing ambiguity is another way we work that businesses like art.
Well, yeah, and I love that and we've talked before about innovation occurs in a mature organization on the front
On
lines.
the front line.
Yeah,
That's
there's somebody out there who's creative and come up with something that's working.
Yep.
And the home office figures it out when the report starts. Well, why are they having all these retained
Yeah.
customers? Why are they having these additional sales? What's good?
Yeah.
Why are their reviews suddenly stellar?
Right.
And so, to your point, right? If I see myself as creative and welcoming of the creative process,
Hmm.
then I would run right out and go, "All right, this is awesome. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Show me what you've created."
Yep.
And can we take that idea and would other people in our organization be interested in doing something similar? And hopefully, ideally, they would take it and go, yeah, that's great. And I could tweak it a little
Right.
bit, make it even better.
Right. We can scale it up in some way or whatever it is. Um, yeah, you're making me think of, and this kind of leads into my final point on this section, but you and I got the chance to hear from Henry Cloud, the famous psychologist, works with a lot of Wall Street firms and has written some best-selling books. We love the Boundaries series. You and I have both had a lot of fun with that. And do you remember him telling the story about there was a branch? It must have been an investment bank, but they had a branch that was just the numbers were outperforming everybody else, and they asked Henry Cloud to go investigate. And if you recall, he described the branch manager. He said, "I thought we had the wrong guy. He looked like a middle school football coach," which I
Mhm.
thought was mean. But
Yeah, disparaging to a middle school football coaches
right, like
everywhere.
like what did he do, right?
Yeah.
But Henry Cloud talked about how amazing this guy was, and it was we won't dip into the secret sauce here, but he had a very unique way of running his all employee meeting,
Mhm.
and it set up the whole week for success. And so anyway, that was because of what was happening at the front lines and saying, something's going on out there. Let's figure it out. Which leads into the final point, which is collaboration, right?
Mm.
That collaboration is a big part of this. An art troupe collaborates, a band, an orchestra, a ballet company. They all collaborate. Artists who work alone collaborate, right? They find the community of artists and work with them. And businesses are no different from that, right? In fact, I have often noticed how similar entrepreneurs are to artists, because they see something the rest of us don't see. And you've heard about Michelangelo. He could look at a block of marble and say, "I see the figure that's in there. I just need to cut it out." Right? It's already there. I just need to cut it out, going with the grain of the stone. And so many entrepreneurs have been in the same boat. You've maybe heard the story of, I think it was Steve Jobs with Johnny Ives, that he took him for a walk. He had come up with iMac 2. The iMac was a hit, and he came up with iMac 2, and Steve's like, No, that's not it. It needs to be like a flower, right?" And like, he took him on a walk to explain this to him, and then you got that amazing floating screen on a pedestal CPU that was just one bar connecting them. Game changer, absolute game changer. And it was just because they decided to work together on doing that. Entrepreneurs do the same thing. Even if they're an entrepreneur with that singular vision, most entrepreneurs are working with a group of entrepreneurs, right? They have a community around them that they're working with. So anytime a business is involved in co-creating value with other people, right? Collecting diverse ideas from your leadership team and beyond. Iterating together, right? Like, we're going to do all this work together. It's not this, win or lose thing. It's not a zero sum race to outperform your rivals. This is a thing that we are in community around, and I think that's another way that businesses are like art. We're collaborating together and co-creating things.
Oh, definitely. Well, I believe you are if you've created the right culture and a safe environment to do those things.
Correct.
So
Correct.
yeah, you've got to demonstrate that your organization welcomes innovation, creativity, new ideas, and things like that.
Right.
And it's not, how many stores do we go into and we talked about, getting the ideas from the employees, and they always come up with the same idea. We'll put up a suggestion box.
Right.
Like, and then somebody goes, we've already got some. Well, where are they at? Well, they're all dusty and they're, stuck in a closet somewhere because we had them out.
Yep.
I had one store and they said, yeah, we had suggestion boxes. I said, well, how did that work? And they said, we don't know. We lost the key.
Yeah.
So we never, and so we went and found one. We tore the bottom out of it, and it was full of slips of paper, from 8 years ago that
That's so sad.
had some nice ideas on them. They said, yeah, and then people just, they just quit doing it.
Imagine that.
So yeah, forget the suggestion box. Yeah, let's go out and ask for
Right.
ideas. Let's go
Let's pull
find,
these ideas.
yeah, the things like your example, right? Find an outlier that's positive and go investigate it with genuine curiosity. The when somebody brings you an idea, don't take great pride in just blasting holes in it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
the my favorite response to a new idea, and there I have three. Uh, right, that's unique, right, and it usually is. That's interesting, yeah. And then my all-time favorite is, wow, I hadn't thought of that before.
Yeah.
And it was all three were typically true. And then to get a further thinking through of the idea, I would ask the question, all right, so tell me how it would work.
Yeah.
And then they would start to, walk me through their idea and things like that. And a lot of times, about halfway through, they go, it's not going to work. And I would say, no, I think you're on to something. Think it through a little bit more, and then
Right.
let's talk about it again.
Right.
And so yeah, I never said no.
Yeah.
Uh, just let's think it through and keep working on it until we get that idea that is the golden nugget that's going to help us leap forward.
I love that. And really, this whole thing is based on the assumption that there will be leaps forward uh eventually. Right? There will
Mhm.
be financial outcomes, right? Where we do win in the marketplace, right? We do rise above the competition, but that's not the focus. It's the outcome of the focus that we're talking about here. And so, and I guess let me just quickly point out, sports is like the opposite, right? It's of course there are organizations who are sports teams doing everything we just talked about, right? They have thought about it in a way where they are embracing ambiguity and they are trying to be iterative and always coming up with an improvement and being very collaborative and team oriented. I get that. But I'm more talking about how sports can be all about measurable outcomes and all about competition and these sort of finite results and that can really squash some of what a business is actually trying to achieve in the long term. So like that sort of that focus on winning versus creation.
Hmm.
There's a score, there's a rank, there's a trophy, and hey, the art world has trophies too, right? They would like to win the Nobel, or excuse me, the Nobel Prize for literature. They would like to win the Booker Prize for literature, but but that's an outcome, right? So focusing too much on scores and rankings or trophies, too much on some sort of end point that is fairly arbitrary, right? The in a in a game it might be match point. It might be the final play of the inning. But for art, right, it's more sort of ongoing without a fixed finish line. And this is where Simon Sinek talks about the infinite game, right? That
Hmm.
like there's always a game to be played here. We can keep going. Um,
And
Go
I
ahead.
think that's why, dynasties in sports are so highly revered.
Yeah.
You're right. It's really easy to put together a team and win a championship.
Yep.
Right. I can buy a championship. I can, but to do it for 3 years in a row, 4 years in a row, 5 years in a row, that requires a whole different skill set than, yeah, we won once and then the whole thing fell apart. And
Right.
and most of the business people we meet, they don't want to win once. They don't want to win a year.
Yeah.
Right. They want to you do this and then they want to, pass it along to the next generation, whatever it might be. So, the
Or impact
idea,
the community or whatever that extrinsic, the intrinsic motivation instead of the extrinsic, the results, the game that we won, the season that we won. It's more than that. They want to go beyond that.
yep, yep. No, I agree wholeheartedly. So, yeah, I think you're on to something here, and I think anybody listening, if it's just me, how can I be more creative and offer up some of the things that I've figured out, right, right, instead of holding them to my, hold them close to the vest, and if I'm in a leadership role, how do I create an environment where creativity is rewarded, recognized, celebrated, and then continued to be shared?
Right. So yeah. So if you're interested in that, hang tight, right? Because that's really what we need to talk about. If you want innovation that's sustained over time, if you want the kind of iterative development of all your ideas that really prevents people from crashing out and burning out, right? Because there's some resilience there. We're always going to do something to make this a little better. If you want your people to be engaged with, a purpose, to have some connection, if you want to have them constantly looking in the gray areas, the nebulous areas, to find some opportunity that nobody else can see because it's too ambiguous. If you want that collaboration, there are some things you can do. So, I'll rattle off some ideas here and we can talk about these, Mike. But, the first is just, you know, you need to be fostering a culture, just like you said earlier. And it's a culture first off of experimentation, right? So, encourage your teams, encourage your people to test ideas, right?
Mhm.
Small scale pilots, right? We're not saying change everything about the organization and try something, but we're talking about prototypes, right? Knowing that you're going to fail. You and I were just talking about that. That you have a client you've been saying we need to fail faster,
Hmm.
right?
The oh yeah, yeah. If we're not failing, we're just not trying enough stuff.
Right.
You know, and I'm not talking catastrophic bet the shop, right?
No,
Bet the
not at
business
all.
on, but yeah, just these small things, all the way down to the individual. I'll meet a 30-year salesperson, and I'll say, "Hey, what are you working on?" Well, I've been tweaking my this part of my process. I'm now saying this instead of this, and I've moved it here.
Hmm.
And like down to individual words, just
Yes.
testing, tuning. Can I get better at this? Can I make it more effective?
Yeah, I love that. And so many organizations, I think Google popularized it, but the idea of I'm going to get some percentage of time for pet projects. I'm going to get to go work on a thing that I think's important, and we'll see where it goes. Right? That's an investment from the business. That let's try some experiments, smaller scale, just a percentage of your time, but let's see what happens.
Hmm.
Another one is to go ahead and talk about that purpose beyond a profit, right? And as you pointed out, like, sometimes, yes, it's like a social issue. It's we're going to end homelessness, somehow as a part of our company or what have you. But I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about just something that's a little bit inspirational and would help guide the decisions. Focusing on an impact that goes beyond the money we're going to make. So it could be, it could be, like I said, a social project, but it could also be, the impact that we just want to make in our community, or the fact that we want to build something that we're all really proud of, or it's something that we want to be able to pass off to our children, or, fill in the blanks on the thing that makes it a little bit bigger than just the bottom line. And spelling that out on a regular basis, right? It's one thing to say, yeah, that's why we're here, but you have to tell people that, and you have to continually remind them of that. So that's the action step we would suggest is, whatever it is you think you're building, you better be telling your people, hey, don't forget this is why we're doing this.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The purpose-driven motive, yeah, will take you so much further.
That's right. That's right. Another thing is encouraging, sort of collaboration and co-creation. You and I, since very early in our automotive career, we have been working with cross-functional teams. Sometimes even teams that have customers involved, or other stakeholders, a vendor involved. And I don't have like a real clear example here of a time where it was just a home run, but I just know every time I've had a cross-functional team, somebody in the room goes, "Oh," and they're talking about somebody they've sat next to for years and years and years, but they happen to be in another department, right? Somebody nearby that they just didn't totally know the flow of how a customer went through the processes in that department, or they didn't understand the impact of a baton that was handed off from their department to the other person's department. There were always eyes open, and it always led to good things. If nothing other than empathy for the other department, and we're not going to blow our stack every time something goes wrong there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the beauty of having somebody who's not working in your business every day, putting fresh eyeballs on it.
Yep.
Right. And usually what that sounds like is the other person either sees it or hears about it, and then they say something to the effect of, "Do you guys ever?"
Right.
It seems like that's how every one of those idea of sharing starts. Like, "Do you guys ever do the such as," and then they're like, "No, we haven't," and then all of a sudden you're off and running, and maybe that's the idea. So
Right.
yeah, I
Right.
love that. Yeah, somebody who doesn't know anything about it, take a fresh look at it and get their feedback.
I love that. Um, so the fourth one here is, how do you embrace ambiguity, right? Like how do you put your hands on something that you can't put your hands on because it's just not tangible? and got me thinking about this. It's really about having a long-term perspective, right? And knowing that we're being intentional about what we're doing, but it's not about the end of the month number per se, right? That'll come, the profits will come, but it's not just these key performance indicators. It's long-term value creation, and that might encourage us to pursue some bold ideas and explore some uncharted markets. And it might also have us focus on some things that we just know are more lead measures than lag measures. It might help us focus on things that we just say, this brings value to our clients. How could we do this better?
Oh
And
yeah.
then the results come.
Well, yeah, I think of that when I think of organizations that do charitable work,
Yep.
in their communities and stuff like that. And they'll tell you, we have no idea what the ROI on this, or even if there is one.
Yep.
But we know it's the right thing to do, and we do believe somehow, some way, this comes back to benefit everyone that works here.
100%.
And so,
100%.
but yeah, yeah, they can't, there's no line on the spreadsheet that says, yeah, because we went and helped build a Habitat for Humanity house, we sold 18.2% more widgets.
Right. Right.
Right. But I know, right, that somewhere out there, this is the right way to do it, and it will help us win.
And again, this sort of ties back into the iterative approach, right? Like maybe that's for a season and then it doesn't seem to be, paying off for us and our heart's not in it and we move on to something else. It's like R&D departments for pharmaceuticals and high tech, right? They know that some of it's going to fail. They still allocate a lot of budget to R&D, right?
Hmm.
So
Oh
we're
yeah.
gonna, we're gonna embrace ambiguity that way.
Yep. Something will stick.
Something will stick. That's right. And then a big one here, and I think this is really Virgil's point when he and I started talking, was just the idea that you're really going to celebrate the process and not just the results. So it's sort
Mhm.
of like talking about those lead measures, right? I have a client that recently got very serious about scoreboarding and sort of making sure they had a good game for their employees to be playing around some of those lead measures, right? There were some specific things they wanted them to do, and they just knew that it would lead to the results they were wanting to see. And man, I just don't think they were prepared for how good that would get. Uh, 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 they internally they have a metric that's known as the trifecta. Again, I'm being very vague here, so I keep their work anonymous. But the trifecta involves selling three different things at the same time, and they have had more trifectas than possibly ever. They're going back and looking at their records, but it happened in 1 month. It was the second month that they've been doing this sort of new approach. And the new approach was let's focus on and celebrate the game we're playing here with the things that are under our control, and let's see what results happen. Well, the results happened. The results really happened. But what they've been celebrating is the process that's under their control to get them there. So, you know, you could do this in a number of ways, right? Like I just said, you could do employee recognition programs, right?
Hmm.
For people contributing and signing in for the process. You could really do deep dives on some of those failed experiments we just talked about. What worked, what were some insights that we got, even though it didn't quote unquote work, and not get hung up about the performance metrics. So yeah, so that's another one is celebrating the process and not just the results.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the idea that yeah, I'll recognize you when it wins, or when it's successful, but I'm going to appreciate you because you made the attempt.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it
There's
may not
value.
have yeah, it may not have turned out like we thought, but I appreciate the effort, the creativity, the extra effort to try and make it better.
That's right. A last one is, sort of how you invest in your people to get them to think more, can I call it artistically, creatively? Can you help them build some skills there? And there are words for this in the business world. Creative problem solving, design thinking, storytelling. These are all methods for causing us to think outside the box and come up with a solution to a problem or embrace an opportunity in a way we haven't so far. And you and I, if you'll recall, towards the beginning of the pandemic, went through some training on this. We had been doing, sort of creative problem solving for a long time, but we hadn't really delved into design thinking other than we knew what it was until we took a class with IDEO, the
Mhm.
famous California design firm that trains teams in human centered design and helping them sort of see challenges that need to be overcome from the perspective of a really empathetic person seeing it through the eyes of the customer, the user. And man, that was worth its weight in gold. That training that we went through, and everybody could do that. Everybody could develop that skill set.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it could be as simple. I was telling you about Amazon's question,
Uh huh.
and their question that they ask themselves, every day is, what would the system do if it were magic?
Right.
And so, just asking a question that forces people to, think completely differently about, okay,
Yeah.
if it was magic, right? If there were no limitations to physics or budget or anything, what would this thing do?
Yeah.
And so they come up with ideas and then they back those ideas up to right. Okay, so what is feasible and what would we have to build to make it work?
and
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 so,
still are doing things that fail, right? Like that's what's so cool about Amazon is love them or hate them. I read that Prime was that way. I guess I saw Jeff Bezos interviewed about this, that Prime came from one particular individual who's said let's see about free shipping. Let's see what happens when we do that. And they lost their rear end for the first few months because people were financially maximizing the shipping situation. But it turns into this thing that has been huge for them. Has made so many customers stick to them for so long. Well, that wouldn't have happened if they hadn't been thinking, like you said, so creatively and willing to be iterative, right? Willing to embrace ambiguity. All the things we've just been mentioning. They wouldn't have created that. So
oh yeah, no, I think that's fantastic, and the idea of yeah, what's possible, you know,
that's
and
right.
and looking to other industries, right? So
Right.
what are other people in the customer service world doing that aren't in our particular line of work?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
For
and
sure.
and, and we call it harvesting, right? You don't want to steal
Right.
anything, but you do want to harvest those ideas
Yep.
and replant them in your organization to see if they can
Yeah.
grow.
What would it look like here? Exactly.
Hmm.
So just a final thought here is, if this sounds of interest to you, if you would like to, have people that are more creative and are, iteratively developing things and have an intrinsic motivation and are okay with ambiguity and are being a big collaborator, start small, right? Like pilot this with a team, with a project to see the value before you scale it up. Doesn't work without leadership buy-in. So whoever's in that chain of command for that team, that project, is going to have to kind of model the behavior. Be okay with failure, be okay with putting purpose first. And the last one, and this is really important, I think, is you're going to have to measure differently. You can't just measure win lose or just how much did we make. You're going to have to measure things that really for the organization are more long term, such as uh, customer engagement, employee engagement. How many new things did we create as a result of this? You're going to have to get a little more creative, and it's probably going to be harder to make some of these measurements. But it will give you a new way of measuring, how are we doing than just looking at the short term, completely arbitrary, monthly, quarterly bottom line. There's more to be measured here.
Oh yeah, yeah. When you think about the business, right, their short-term goal is to have good customer satisfaction survey scores.
Yeah.
Right. We want good Google reviews and things like that. But that's not the goal of the goal.
Right.
The goal of the goal is to retain customers,
Yep.
right? Loyal customers. And ultimately, a level above that would be advocate customers.
That's right.
So the short-term team metric would be, your CSI score, your Google review score. But your long-term purpose is that people keep coming back for years and years and years.
And spreading the word. Yeah.
Mhm.
Love it. Well, that's my neat thought from Virgil. Virgil, I hope I did justice to the germ of an idea you gave me that I think was already fully formed in your head because Virgil is a deep thinker. But yeah, I just thought it was important that we bring to our audience, like you as an individual, maybe need to start thinking, I'm an artist. My business is art. This team, we are an art team more than a sports team because there are so many downstream connection points that parallel. So hope that helps, folks.
Oh, that's fantastic. And speaking of artists,
Oh,
the silky smooth tones of our announcer, Mr. John Wolf. Take it away, artist Wolf.
And that's a wrap. The musings of Mark and Mike. No rights reserved, etc. Feel free to share and discuss what you heard today. Even claim the ideas as your own. Who'd want to do that? See you next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius. Thanks.
that's good enough.